I've really been wanting to share this story for some time now, but haven't really found a good outlet for it until stumbling across this sub. The other people involved don't really like talking about it. It's upsetting and doesn't make us look good, but I just think it's a great awful story at this point. Sorry, this is going to be a long one. Names changed to protect personal info. About 5 years ago, my wife and I went on a weekend camping trip with our two closest friends, another married couple. The campsite is just outside of Yosemite and absolutely beautiful. The beauty of it and creepiness of it is that you take a dirt road for about an hour and a half off the main road to get to it. It's extremely secluded but never felt threatening. It's a really popular campsite, so there was always people around, especially in the summer when this occurred. The first day was awesome. I don't remember exactly what we did, but I remember having a great time. The campsites are fairly close together and usually separated by various shrubs, etc. I remember we were all pretty pumped about the site we got, as there were no neighbors on one side, just forest and no one occupying the site closest to us. This is uncommon as these campgrounds stay fully booked throughout the summer. Day 2 started normally. We had breakfast and headed to the lake for a couple of hours. The lake was about a 20-minute hike from the main campground. When we got back around 2 o'clock, we noticed that the site next to us now had a silver rental car parked on it. We didn't think much of it and went about making a fire to cook with. At some point, we noticed the occupant of the site next to us, a pretty average-looking white dude, maybe early 40s. Honestly, he was so average-looking that it's hard to even picture him. We all immediately caught on to the fact that he was constantly looking over at us. My friend Dave even made a comment to me under his breath. "Do you notice this guy keeps looking over here?" I remember feeling a little bit uncomfortable as we were all in still bathing suits from the lake, but I made a conscious effort to ignore it. It's worth mentioning that we were a little bit buzzed and drunk. Not out of control or anything, just feeling pretty good. Throughout the afternoon and into the evening, we continued to notice the guy constantly looking over at us. In hindsight, Dave or I should have called him out. This story doesn't make us look great, but whatever. I had been stressed at work prior to the trip, and I really didn't want to let some creepy dude throw off my relaxed vibe. Maybe that was stupid, I know. The alcohol coupled with the fact that we honestly kind of felt bad for him led us to not confront him. Yes, it was very creepy, but I told myself he was an awkward, lonely dude. Aside from the staring, there were a couple of mildly weird incidents that occurred leading up to the very weird stuff. The first was that at some point, he left his site to go do whatever. While he was gone, a girl, probably in her mid-20s, around our age, walked by and snapped a picture of his license plate. I remember asking her if she needed anything, and she smiled awkwardly and kept walking. Dave and I both thought this was odd, but we were preoccupied with beer. Later into the evening, around 7 o'clock, the camp host was doing her rounds checking people in. She checked us in and moved on to him. I remember us all eavesdropping intently to hear what they were saying. I think we just wanted to hear what this creep sounded like. He kept asking questions about the bathhouse. We didn't know there was a bathhouse or even what that was, but he had like 100 different questions about it. Where is it? How late is it open? Is it private? Maybe it's not that weird, but in context, definitely odd. The sun started to go down and we were all drunk, so we weren't too concerned with the creepy dude anymore. At one point, we went for a walk and noticed him snooping around what we believed to be the bathhouse. Now, I would call out this kind of behavior, but again, I was drunk and 5 years stupider at the time. We all laughed and talked about how creepy he was. Back at the site, we continued to drink and have a good time. At one point, the guy started eating beans aggressively out of a can in the light of his single lantern. No fire. He looked at us while doing it, and Dave and I kind of snickered at each other at how weird it was. I don't think the girls noticed. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. I think the guy had left his sight at this point. I kind of remember us making jokes like, I better not wake up to that dude looking in our window. Haha. My wife and I slept in our SUV with the seats folded down. Dave and Sarah slept in the camper shell of their truck. I remember feeling a little bit creeped out as I fell asleep but shrugged it off. At around 2:30 a.m., both my wife and I were jolted awake by what we thought was a woman's scream. We both looked at each other and asked if the other had heard that. We came to the conclusion that it was probably people at some other site being loud and decided to go back to sleep. As I was trying to go back to sleep, I started feeling very unsettled. I decided to get out of the car and take a look around. I cracked my door, trying to be as quiet as possible. I had got about one leg out of the car when I heard faint but direct whispering coming from Dave and Sarah's camper shell, about 4 feet away. I froze and then heard it again. I eventually realized that they were trying to tell me something. I whispered back, "What?" I then very clearly heard Dave say, "Start your car." I instantly realized that something was wrong, so rather than ask questions, I climbed back into my car to start it. Right away, Dave and Sarah burst out the back of the camper and frantically jumped into my car. They told me to drive and they were too freaked out to explain anything, so I just kind of drove aimlessly. Eventually I pulled over, figuring that we were far enough away from whatever had freaked them out. Finally, Sarah calmed down enough to tell us what had happened. As she put it, she was woken by a light coming from Creepy Dude's campsite. Apparently, he had set up lanterns and flashlights to spot himself, completely naked, masturbating in the direction of our cans. She also mentioned that he was flaccid and not able to finish. A gross detail, but I feel it's important. It gets weirder. At some point, he stopped and turned off the lights, and began using a flashlight to signal across a small ravine that the campsite's backed up to. I'm talking like Morse code or something. Across the ravine, an old RV began using its headlights to signal back. Dave was awake by this point. I questioned them on this detail, and they both said it was very clear that they were communicating. After that, he turned off his light. Keep in mind, it is absolutely pitch black out there at night. After a few minutes, they heard footsteps around their car, followed by a hard tap on the window. That is what caused Sarah to scream, hence waking me up. At this point, I decided that we needed to call the police. The problem was there was absolutely zero cell service at this campsite. Furthermore, it was about an hour and a half up a service road from what was already a very remote part of the state, so leaving at night wasn't an option. We decided the best course of action was to alert the camp host. We drove around and eventually found the trailer she lived in. She was understandably confused to be woken up at 3:30 in the morning, but was responsive. She mentioned that the guy was really weird when she checked him in and called the police on her satellite phone. Apparently, there was massive wildfire burning that weekend, and the police said they wouldn't be able to send anyone out until sunrise. The camp host said there really wasn't anything she could do beyond calling the police. It really sucked hearing that. Basically, we were stuck in our car in the pitch blackness while some crazy masturbating dude was out and about, not to mention whoever was in the RV. One more really weird thing happened. At around 4 a.m., we were all sitting in my car when a man in a hood walked right up to the window. The second I noticed him, I turned on my engine and headlights. He ran off into the trees. We all sat in my car until sunrise. Once it was light out, we went back to the site to pack up all of our stuff. His car was still there with blankets hung in all the windows. The worst thing that just felt gross, and we wanted to get the heck out of there, so we quickly packed up and left. The whole thing just felt insane, and we wanted to get the heck out of there, so we quickly packed up and left. A couple of hours after we left, I got a call from the police. They said they went out to the campsite and questioned the guy. He said he was simply showering. The cop told me there was nothing he could do. It was our word against his. He also questioned the people in the RV. They said they didn't know what he was talking about, but mentioned that, and I quote, "A very rude camper screamed in the middle of the night." The whole experience with the police was frustrating. I tried following up. I even tried getting help from a family member who was a sheriff, but even he said there wasn't anything they could do unless that particular police chief really wanted to investigate this guy. So that's the story. I learned a lesson about being polite when somebody is making you uncomfortable. Nowadays, I am much more aggressive with creepy people. I also know it's easy to hear this story and wonder why Dave or I didn't just confront the guy, especially when he's literally masturbating at the car you're sleeping in. I don't know. I wish we would have shown more courage, but honestly, it was really scary in the moment, and I'm okay with admitting that. Now I think it's kind of funny just how stupid we were and how bizarre the whole situation was. I also feel fortunate that nobody was hurt. Clearly, we were dealing with a very screwed up individual who had accomplices. I can only imagine what their end goal was and what they would have been capable of doing. I also think they had done stuff like this before. I just really wish the police could have done something more. Hey everyone, I hope your holidays treated you well. I'm writing this on a throwaway because, well, I don't know, it just feels better, I guess. I'm 23 female, and while I do have to dodge the occasional creep, it's moments like this that make me question whether or not humanity has any hope and debate if anyone can actually be trusted. So for the context of this story, I am 4'11". I miss the tall gene that my family has. I'm petite, but trust me, all of the height translates well into fury. I go running at the track not far from where I live. Not even really for the intent of exercising. It's more like my decompression stop to daydream and run off the day's frustrations. I did about a mile and had a seat on a bench to catch my breath, look for another playlist on my iPod, and debate if I was going to do any further running. A man came and had a seat next to me. He was very large, both in stature and body weight, somewhere in the ballpark of 6'4". He could have easily squished me like a bug. I didn't pay him much mind, or at least tried not to. It was especially hard given the ample amount of park benches around the track that were unoccupied. He said something, but I could barely hear him with my AirPods in. I took them out and asked him to repeat himself. He said, "They don't make them the way they were when I was your age." I was confused, but not really confused. He went on to say things like bodies are changing and if I had a girlfriend like you. After continuing to not say anything to him, he asked if my parents were okay with me being in the park alone and asked what time my curfew was. He then started rambling about my butt and boobs, implying that I was extremely advanced for my age. Dude, I'm small and yes, I have tits, but I'm old enough to drink at a bar. I'm financing a car. I vote, I pay rent. But still creepy. I got up to leave and he stood up after me. He asked me if he could take me for food, but I ignored him and kept walking. I went near the bathroom where they have a seat of wall lockers and got my things. I also made a pit stop in the bathroom for obvious reasons. When I left, I started making my way to my car, but was on the sidewalk not far away from my vehicle. I made the long loop around so that I wouldn't have to pass near him. As I'm about to get in my car, he calls out to me and says, "Oh, so you can drive?" I don't know if that was disappointing to figure out that I was older than he thought or whatever. I didn't stop. I got in the car and left, and he made a motion for me to stop, but I did it. I also had my hand on my revolver. Don't think it was that extreme of a case, but screw it. I'd rather ask for forgiveness. The reason I'm typing this narrative out in the first place is because I got a card in the mail, and surprise, there's a registered sex offender in my neighborhood that committed crude acts towards a minor. And guess whose black and white picture was in the corner? I filed a police report this afternoon. I told them he was at a public park and possibly thought I was a minor. They said they would look into it, but judging by how they took my report, I hold out little hope. Be careful out there. I don't care what age you are. Some people are just dangerous. So, a few years ago, I, female 17 at the time, would attend community college at the outskirts of my hometown. I would take an hour-and-a-half long bus drive because both my parents worked and my other siblings were too young to drive. The outskirts of my town, despite being the literal outskirts, are more populated than you would expect. The strip malls and apartment buildings. The bus would drop me off about 4 blocks from my university, which isn't too far. I always enjoyed those few moments. Gave me time to disassociate. Anyway, this one time I left my phone at the library like a true idiot. Using my brother's phone, I called a friend who worked at the school library during the late evening shift, 7 to 9, and said he would bring my phone to me, but he lived closer to the college than I did, so I told him I would just meet him at a shift and pick it up myself. He said okay, and I boarded the bus around 6. Now I get off the bus at my usual spot, and the place looked deserted. I'd never been there that late at night, and maybe it was just because it was a weekday that people were home, or I don't know. I had my brother's phone in my pocket and just clutched it tighter and tighter, picking up my speed until I was practically jogging. I'm nearing a corner when a flash of light goes off to my right. There in the shadows is a slimy, grimy-looking man. He's balding with a tourist shirt unbuttoned halfway, showing off his chest hair. He was wearing sunglasses at night, was wearing some gold jewelry, and was probably borderline morbidly obese. Just picture the word sleazy as a person. And most importantly, he had just taken a picture of me. In the instant that I saw the flash go off, I knew it was coming from his phone. Now, I think it's important to understand our positioning. He was pressed against a building to my right at the corner I had to turn. I was about 10 feet away from it. To my left, on the same side of the street, was a car with blacked out windows and no license plates, directly across the sidewalk from the man. The car was parked with the driver's seat facing me so that it was on the wrong side of the road, because America drives on the right side as opposed to the left. I had slowed down at that point as I began to debate my next moves, crossed the street and continued walking, make a break for the school, turn 180 and leave my phone at the library, or approach the potentially dangerous man. I did the stupidest thing possible and approached the man. I'm not going to sit here and give you shit advice, but maybe don't do what I did. I'm alive, but I definitely got lucky. Anyway, I demanded to know what he was doing. He looked taken aback. I could see his brain short-circuiting because this tiny young girl was red in the face, demanding to know what he was doing. He eventually spluttered about how he was just standing here. I said no. I saw you take that picture of me. His face fell. He said no, that he hadn't done that. Why would he want a picture of me? I had imagined it. I asked to see his gallery, which was extremely risky because who knew what I would have seen. He slowly pulls up his gallery, and as it's opening, I see a blurry picture of me in the distance. I didn't think I'd get that far, granted. I had been running on adrenaline during our whole interaction, but this really made me pause. I told him to delete it. Then a door slammed shut. I just knew it was the parked car. My brain cleared up and I hightailed it to the school. I could hear a single pair of footsteps behind me, but I sure as hell wasn't going to turn around and check who it was. The car started, but they would have to do a U-turn on a relatively narrow street just to be able to follow me. I think that's what saved my life. The fact that the car was parked facing the wrong direction. I reached the school, out of breath and in tears. My friend opened the building for me and I was crying, explaining what had happened. He locked us in while we waited for the police, but the sleazy guy and his buddy were never found. Anyways, my mom had gotten out of work by that point and I called her to ask her to pick me up. We waited with my friend to the end of his shift and drove him home too. Needless to say, I carry mace with me everywhere I go now and am yet to find a police report stating a guy matching his description had been arrested. To be honest, I don't think the police believe me fully, but who knows? And to this day I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't confronted him? Would I be able to write this story out, or did I put myself in unnecessary danger by doing that? So in college, I worked in the university bookstore, one of my 3 jobs back then, and I had my fair share of interactions with nearly everybody on campus. One temporary worker often had her friends in during her shifts. Our parents loosely knew each other, so that was a weird connection away from home, and we kind of became close. One day, while our friends were down an aisle, she asked if I was single. I said I was. One of my friends really likes you. Would you be interested in a date? Looking down the aisle, one of her friends was very fit and personable, and I had helped her before, and she was overly friendly. The other weighed significantly more than healthy and me, complained about everything, and had an incredibly annoying laugh. I said, which friend? Her. Redacted, the one on the left, aka the fit one. Me. Oh sure, I wouldn't mind a date. She then went and talked to her friends. They looked back at me as I squared off stacks of books and chatted amongst themselves, and then they left. Her. Are you free tomorrow? Yeah, what's up? I'm throwing a party in my dorm and my friends will be there. It'd be cool if you came by. The next night came and I went over. My coworker's fit friend wasn't there, but her other friend was. Let's call her stalker friend. Stalker friend and I talked for a while. I was not attracted to her, but that's no reason to not have a conversation. She was nice enough. After a while, I asked, so when is Redacted coming? Your friend said she was coming. I'm Redacted. Oh, I must have gotten confused with names. My mistake. We chat for a while and the fit friend never showed. I thank my coworker for the invite and start heading out. When I get outside, wait, where are you going? I've got 3 classes and then work after. I should get some sleep. Oh, I'll come by for a visit. The next day at the bookstore, she follows me up and down the aisles for my entire shift. My manager leaves me hanging as he's finding the entire situation funny. She and I talk as I work. I try to be friendly, but following me around for hours is unnerving. Finally, at the end of my shift. Me. Well, I've got homework. Best I say goodnight and head back. Stalker friend moves in for a kiss. Oh, sorry, no, I'm good. See you tomorrow? She asked. I work in the computer lab tomorrow. Sorry, can't really hang out. There are 3 computer labs on campus. One big one is in the library, and one is in the computer science building, and one in the nearby elementary school for teaching students, where no one ever comes because it's a long walk from campus. I love the elementary school lab as I get paid to debug teacher laptops and do my homework as nobody comes in there to use the lab. Thankfully, I'm assigned to this one, or I thought I'd be thankful. 1 hour into my shift. She comes barreling down the hall. You're here, she says. Me, uncomfortably. Hey, you. Went around all campus and couldn't find you. I didn't even know there was a lab here. Yeah, well, you found me. She awkwardly sits next to me. So, what are you doing? I'm doing my homework, I said, and I have a lot to focus on. She then sits behind me, hugs me and rests her head on my shoulder. Keep doing my homework and after a while say, Hey, can you stop? You're kind of making me uncomfortable. I'll teach you how to be comfortable, she said. Okay, no, you just need to stop. I'm not interested in you. I'm sorry, but I really need to do my homework and you have to leave. No, we're perfect and I think you're cute, she said. Then I will leave. This isn't okay. I know where you live, she said. I exit the lab, shut off the lights, and hurriedly hide in the nearby woods. This was all a bluff. I really couldn't leave in case somebody stopped by or I got a call from IT. After 20 minutes, I saw a stalker friend leave with a plastic bag I hadn't noticed her come in with, and she walked back toward campus. I go back in and finish my shift without incident. When I get back to my dorm mates say some girl came by earlier looking for me. I told them the story and one says, Oh crap, when we let her in, she said she was going to leave a note. On my desk, there's a 5-page love letter about how we're great and all the explicit things she wants to do. Eventually, I went to bed, got up the next day and showered before class. I go back in my room and noticed that when she left the note, she also took a few things of mine. My entire underwear drawer was empty. All of my boxers and most of my socks were gone. That was in the plastic bag I saw her leave the lab with the night before. She stole all my underwear before finding me. I told our friend and she didn't see anything wrong. We stopped talking after this. Lesson learned. Girls can be weirdo creeps too. I'll preface this by saying I was raised by a killer. My grandfather and grandmother raised me, and when I was 17, my grandfather stalked, kidnapped, and murdered my grandma because she wanted a divorce. I also married my ex-husband at 22, later to find out that his dad was a prolific pedophile, assaulting his sisters as young as 6 years old. Both are in prison for life. But these are men I was extremely close to. For a while, I was almost attracted to danger, and the warning signs were easily ignored and considered normal, until I started listening to my intuition, and now I can spot these predatory types of people out. They know I recognize them. It's like an unspoken thing. Like when you're at a party and you and someone else see something funny but don't know each other well enough to say it out loud, so you just look at each other and kind of laugh telepathically. It's only happened twice, as I don't really get out like that, and to be frank, there aren't that many people like that out there. And if they are out there, I'm not adept enough at pointing them all out, but I could tell almost immediately with this man. My friend's mom is a truck driver. My mom has been taking my daughter to play with his daughter on little play dates. They met at a church group. Come to find out later that this church group is a weird extremist version of Christianity where they believe all the white people are evil and they are the chosen ones rather than the Jews and a whole bunch of other weird stuff. It's kind of like a cult. I became uncomfortable with my mom taking my daughter to these play dates once I realized how disturbed their combined beliefs were. I didn't want to cut off the play dates cold turkey for the sake of the kids, so I started taking time off work to join them and told my mom that he wasn't allowed around my daughter without me being there. When I first met him, he was very charming and sweet. Funny, but annoyingly jolly and clearly trying hard to appear innocent and sweet. He used a soft voice to make me feel comfortable and incessantly talked about being provocative to make himself more manly. He told me weird things like that his daughter wasn't allowed to wear pants, only dresses. Then he kept offering me drinks, one after the other, while we were hanging out with our kids. It's not a big deal, but I'm not a drinker, especially not on play dates, and I made that very clear to him. While we were sitting down watching the kids at the beach at this time, he set up a little blanket area and told me I could come closer. I did not know how to react other than to say I needed to sit where I was sitting to be better for the kids. I already had been sitting on my own blanket. He kept pushing and said I could see them from here. Here being basically on top of his lap on the blanket he'd set up. He stared at me silently for what seemed like an hour before I scooted slightly closer to him, to not make things more awkward for everybody around. I sat on the edge of the corner of the blanket and tried to avoid eye contact and focus on the kids, being sure to not have him get close. I got bad vibes but figured he was obviously weird because of his culty beliefs and just shrugged it off as him being odd, but my gut was burning for days after that first meeting. I also noticed that he spoke really badly about women, especially his kid's mom. I figured he was just a misogynistic weirdo. He went on a truck run, and when he came back, he immediately wanted to get the kids together again. I told my mom that I had to be there, so we arranged a date and time when I wasn't working. We went to a paint studio for the kids, and again, the whole time he was offering me drinks. At an art studio for kids, where no drinks were served. He even ran to a bar to go get a drink and then brought it into the children's art studio. A handful of beer as he was surrounded by kids painting bluey portraits. It was bizarre. We went from the art studio to a trampoline park, and as the kids were joking around and jumping and playing, he repeatedly picked me up and threw me into the foam ball pit, despite my clear discomfort and telling him I wasn't feeling well and asked him to stop. He then pulled me down on top of him while he was laying on the trampoline, to which I got very upset and stormed off, taking my daughter with me. At one point before that, I had gotten a friction burn on my wrist from sliding down the trampoline too fast, and he took my wrist and grabbed it hard, then pressed down on the open sore to taunt me. I don't know if this man is just socially awkward or disturbed or what, but my body has never physically reacted so strongly to a person besides my ex-husband's father, who was a convicted pedo. I could not sleep for days. I started smoking cigarettes again after 10 years of having quit. My thoughts were racing constantly. I called my brothers and started telling them how odd it was, but ended up crying at the end of our conversations out of pure fear. My stomach was shaking. This lasted for about 2 weeks. Obviously, I can't say if he's a serial killer, but the truck driver occupation paired with his obvious devious nature is not something I want to mess with. After my second year in college, I booked an Airbnb for close friends and me that I had been eyeing for a while. It was an off-grid yurt, not a typical stay for me. The yurt was situated on a dirt road 10 minutes from the main road. To get there, it was less of an address and more of a turn right at the 2 tires stacked, continue for a mile, go north at the fork. The first night was great. The next day, we explored around town and then returned to our yurts to hang out. I didn't see any neighbors, only homes in the far distance. So, given the heat, I felt comfortable wandering topless around our yurt. When came night, I slept naked. We heard what we assumed to be a distant party early in the night. Loud music was traveling from far away. Sometime along the night, the music stopped and I fell asleep. A while later, my friend, still awake, heard 2 men's voices speaking to each other. Their voices got closer and closer until one started shushing the other and they started talking in whispers. Suddenly, they stopped talking and walked directly up to our yurt, shining a flashlight at the walls. All of our belongings were inside, but my car and our shoes, very obviously 2 women's, were directly outside the yurt. They then turned the flashlight off. Up until this point, I had been asleep but awake to what, in my mind, sounded like a stampeding herd of animals growing closer. I remember being in a half-dream, half-awake state, where I genuinely thought there was a galloping animal charging our yurt. What my friend later shared with me was that she was pinching me as hard as she could, and that's how I finally woke up. I never felt the pinch. I remember gasping as I opened my eyes for some reason as I was lying on my back in bed. My friend was lying on her side facing me, and she immediately brought her finger to her mouth to shush me. I was now fully awake but frozen because I had no idea what was going on. We couldn't talk because the desert air carried every sound, every creak of the bed, and I was trying hard to breathe calmly. Since I was on my back, it was difficult to face her without making a sound, so I had my head slightly turned to see what she was whispering. Every minute the wind would pick up and all we could hear was the breeze. The next minute, complete silence except for their footsteps in the dirt, slowly walking around us. At one point, they stomped loudly all around our yurt, and I realized that must have been what I thought was the stampeding animals. It got silent again, and just when we thought they must have left, we heard the faintest sound of footsteps encircling us. I'm a very shy, timid person, but my fight or flight kicked in as wanting to scream as loudly and deeply as I could. "What the F do you think you're doing?" And yell and fight and kick. My friend was the opposite and told me that we needed to be absolutely silent. We were communicating on our notes app with the brightness turned all the way down. When it had been what felt like eternity, she texted 911. The dispatcher was absolutely useless and wouldn't send somebody out because we didn't have an address. We kept texting them that we were on a dirt road and all we had were the directions. We sent them and begged to send somebody out. We didn't want the men to know we were on a phone because the screen's brightness was still bright against the complete darkness, so we gave up on texting. I hated myself for not wearing pajamas, for not having all of my self-protection tools under my pillow and instead in my back on the floor. I remember completely accepting that I might get stabbed. I thought about what it might be like for my family to find out that I'm dead and how sorry I felt to not explain. I remember in the middle of this eternal frozen state, I heard the zipper rattling and, for the first time, my friend and I broke silence and yelled, "Now," as if to cue me leaping to my bag of self-defense items by the door to pull my alarm, sound off my taser, and yelled that 911 was on their way as my friend dialed them on the speaker. I remember making ourselves as loud as we could. I remember the distant siren approaching closer and also packing up my belongings quicker than I ever have in my entire life. When a police officer arrived, he waited as we packed up our bags into my car. He said we shouldn't be staying so far away from the main road, and we agreed. It was supposed to just be a fun Airbnb. As we were about to pack up our last thing, my friend noticed large footprints in the otherwise perfect sand around her tent. They were inches from the tent, and we hadn't walked up that close because to get that close, you had to step over a circle of rocks decorating the border of our yurt. We only entered through the front door zipper where the rocks ended. The officer didn't believe it wasn't ours, despite the significantly larger footprints. He said he had been patrolling the area with police dogs, and that was what we must have heard. I hate that I second-guessed myself for the rest of the night, thinking we may have just scared ourselves over nothing. High on adrenaline, made the drive home non-stop. We slept together at my house, and I was shaking for the rest of the night, and we both slept with stuffed animals, which at our age was very out of the norm. In the morning, I walked her out to her car to say goodbye. I froze when I got to my car because covering every inch were the largest, meatiest handprints in brown dirt. I consider my brother a big guy, and even his hand was smaller than the handprints on my car. I was so angry the police officer didn't see that, but I was also glad I had proof that somebody was right there that night. I took so many pictures because I never wanted to forget the image of so many handprints as evidence. The most unsettling part was that my friend shared with me there had been many recent unsolved murders in Wonder Valley within the year before. When she got home, she researched to ease her mind about what the area was like and found articles of missing people minutes from our site. I literally recognized every road the articles mentioned as the roads leading to our yurt. I realize you may be thinking nothing horrendous happened to us, but I've never felt that deep in my gut subconscious complete acceptance that I may end up dead that night. It was a complete gut feeling, and I don't know how else to describe it. I used to live in a trailer park for my sophomore year of college. It was a really nice city, super liberal and hippy-dippy. My 2 roommates were off in class, but I took the day off of school as our dishwasher took a crap and I had to wait for the repairman to show up. It was one of those ridiculous anytime between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. things. I did not want to wait a day longer as my roommates sucked at hand washing dishes. I would have had to wash them all again as I cooked most of my meals at home and we had a limited kitchen set. Anyways, I sleep in till about 10:45 a.m. and my alarm goes off. I probably dicked around for a few minutes then got in the shower, not expecting the repairman to be around till noon, or after at least. I was butt naked and had a head full of shampoo when I heard somebody knock on the door. I start washing up as quickly as I can when I hear more aggressive knocking. Dude is waiting like 5 seconds between each volley of knocks. Thinking he must have been knocking for a while and I didn't hear him in the shower, I was feeling bad for making them wait. As I'm drying off and quickly putting on some clothes, I hear a very loud boom come through the door. I kind of second-guessed myself and thought, did I really just hear that? And stopped for 1 second. Then I heard another loud boom and I definitely could make out the noise of my door being forced in and opening. I thought about going to my room to retrieve one of my 3 guns, then I realized they were still all in their cases after my last range day with the locks on them. I was almost smiling at the irony of all my preparations for this scenario and I got caught lacking the one day it all mattered. Naked and afraid. I heard somebody calling out, "Hello," and I decided to go meet up with my maker in a t-shirt and a towel wrapped around my ding-dong. I figured if there was a fight coming, maybe they would second guess getting my half-washed nuts rubbed all over them. I walked down my hallway and leaned out into the kitchen, which has a vision of the front door. My door had been smashed in alright, and the wood frame was shredded. I caught the gaze of a scrawny man about my size, 5'10", holding a sledgehammer, standing just beside my ruined door. He honestly looked just as surprised as me and he says, "I'm sorry, I did not think anyone was home," and just bolts away. I am like as confused as can be and just looking at my smashed in door half naked like an idiot. I finally throw on some pants and go outside to investigate, but it was far too late to catch the culprit. My door had 2 huge dents in it, but I held it up. Just the frame had been beaten in and left 2 gashes going in. One where my doorknob was and one where my deadbolt was. I had a suspicion that it was not a burglar, so I called my dad and asked him if the repairman he sent had just come by and explained what just happened as best I could. He said he would call me back, and I get a ring from him a few minutes later while I'm seeing if I can salvage the door, and he sounds livid. The contractor they sent was mistakenly told the job was for an asbestos test, typically what has to be done before a trailer is taken to the dump. The guy must have assumed the home was vacant and let himself in after a court seat knock and got scared when I was home and ran away. The part that made my dad angry was that they tried to say that we had to pay for the damages for some smooth brain reasoning the greaseball manager came up with, and it ended with a "see you in court" for my dad. He told me to photograph anything we could use as evidence and he would drive over to help me fix my door as he was only about an hour's drive away. Making a very long and boring story short after that, it all ended with the contracting company deciding to just cough up $200 instead of going to court, and the cherry on top was they sent the man that beat my door in back to give me the most awkward and rehearsed apology. I was reminded of this story as I drove past their office today and saw their doors were shuttered and everything was gone. Hopefully they're out of business and no longer sledgehammering doors in for surprise asbestos tests. I am from a small town. The kinds where you are in the same class with the same kids from preschool through graduation. I was never popular and had my fair share of bullies, but never as bad as one kid in my class, Max. He was on the shorter side and had these little round glasses with his hair slicked to the side like he was right out of a movie cast as the stereotypical nerd. He kept to himself and didn't really interact with others if he could avoid it. Fast forward to 8th grade, when we were paired as lab partners and had to sit at the same table together every day for the entire year. I considered myself a nice person and always went out of my way to make sure I wasn't rude to people, especially people who hadn't done anything to deserve it. So, of course, I was friendly and happy to be his partner as long as he did his fair share of the work. The year came and went, and he was shy but polite, and we got along fine being partners. 9th grade started, and I had a lot of troubles at home with my birth father, so I chose to move in with my mom a few towns over. I was only about 30 minutes away, but I had to start a completely new school a month into my freshman year, and it was pretty scary. I may not have been popular at my last school, but I did have several friends who I loved and missed dearly. My mom would often drive me to the other town to see my friends and hang out, and I also started making new friends at my new school. It was a good setup, and I continued this way until I was 16 and could drive myself. I never heard anything from Max, and honestly, I kind of forgotten about him. That was until my junior year of high school. I started casually seeing this other guy, Jack, from my hometown, and he asked me to go with him to prom. I was excited and happy to say yes, as I would get to spend the night with him and my friends from childhood. A couple of months before prom, my mom told me that there was a new lady at her job, and she was asking about me because her grandson was seeing me, and she wanted a picture so that she could put a face to my name. My mom knew Jack and knew this wasn't his grandmother, so she asked his name, and wouldn't you know it, it was Max. My mom showed her a picture of me that she had on her desk, and the lady went on her way. A few weeks later, she asked for the color of my prom dress so that she knew what to get Max so that we matched. My mom was confused but told her it was pink. About 2 weeks before prom, some of my friends from hometown told me that Max had been telling some people that we were going to the dance together and that he was so excited. I thought this was creepy, but I didn't put too much thought into it. The night of prom, I picked Jack up and we headed over to the school only to find Max and his grandma waiting outside the entrance so that she could take pictures of us before we went in. I was not the one to disappoint people, so I politely took a couple of pictures with him as my actual date stood off to the side and waited. If Max's grandma was confused that I had another date, she didn't show it. The rest of the night went smoothly and Jack and I had a great time. We didn't see Max anymore and assumed that he had left. Other than his grandmother telling my mom that he lost my number and trying to get it for him, which she thankfully didn't do, I didn't hear much from him until we graduated. I went to a state college and I had heard that he got into a well-respected private university. Everything was fine for the first few weeks of college, and then I ran into him. He caught me on the way to class one day. I was polite and asked him if he was a student here too, which he was, and I chatted with him for a minute before hurrying off to class. It was a relatively harmless interaction, but still creeped me out a bit since I know he got into the other school and wondered why he chose to go to a state college. For the next few months, I ran into him almost daily. He always wanted to talk and never seemed to be with anyone else. I found out from some girls in my dorm that he had been hanging around asking about me, trying to figure out my class schedule and where I would be and when. He also told them that he was my boyfriend and he passed up a scholarship to another college to come here and be with me instead. They figured out that he was lying when they never saw us together for long periods or him up in the rooms with me and stopped answering his questions. I left at the end of the semester to move home and take classes at a nearby school. I did not tell him, obviously. The following year, I got married to my boyfriend from my senior year of high school. Anyway, we were in this small town, which is in the same county as my hometown, or a fair shortly after the wedding. While walking around and enjoying ourselves, I see Max staring at us at the end of the block. It was the first time I had been genuinely fearful of him, as the look on his face was nothing short of hatred. I tried to ignore him and went about my night, seeing him a few more times, always with that look on his face. The next few years passed, with me hearing nothing from him at all. I didn't even know if he still lived around the area or not. I found out a little while after that he did when I started working at a clothing store in town. He would stop in and sit in that dad chair next to the door for all the guys to hang out in while their people shopped. I mentioned it to my manager because of our history and the fact that he would stare at me constantly while sitting there, but he always came in with a girl. I later found out it was his sister, so they didn't think too much of it. He never spoke to me, just stared. When I was in my mid-20s, I moved to a city in my home state, but still several hours away from my small town. I am 30 now and doing well in life. Other than a few random Facebook friend requests, which I rejected, I haven't heard from him. I hope that it stays that way. Long post that felt good to get out. This is something that gave me anxiety for years and I shook while writing it. I switched from first I to third person OP unintentionally, but it makes it easier to write about for me. We moved into our house when I was about 5. My first memory of it was jumping on the twin beds with the white wicker headboards with my sister. A family moved into the house down the street when I was probably 7 or 8. Tim, Deanna, and baby Sarah. We moved out of the house when I was 13 to renovate it. We moved back in when I was 14. Also, the summer when I was allowed to have a Facebook account. Tim adds me as a friend. Oh, a grown-up family friend wants to be my friend. That's cool. I hit accept. Tim starts conversation. Thanks for the ad. Then he starts conversations about normal things. Family and vacations and stuff. I reply. Tim pops up when I get into a relationship in 2009. He pops up when I break up. Tim and I talk about our families, and he starts talking about giving the talk to his children. Blathers on about how much he admires my parents and their parenting style. Hey, are you still with that guy? Wouldn't want to lose our Friday night sitter. Not an exact quote, but hey girl, love your homecoming pictures. Who's the photographer? This type of messaging is regular and would go on every few weeks until 2014. Below are some more specific incidents. I start taking pictures outside of photography class. Tim compliments me on my photos, and he comments on my hair color change. He also comments on how classy I am and smart, from beginning to near the end. Tim comes up the street to take photos of me before my senior prom. To his credit, he had a gorgeous camera, and I still have one of the portraits somewhere. All along, OP thinks it's weird but doesn't think she's allowed to say anything because Tim is a grown-up after all. Sometimes, OP blows the message off for weeks and weeks, hoping he'll go away, but he's relentless. She makes excuses like, yeah, I see these, but I'm super busy. You can email me at blank. Edit timeline, by the way. Writing about this dislodged some things. OP gets a Twitter before college. Tim follows her and tweeting Lady Gaga lyrics. I need a man that thinks it's right when it's so wrong. Or tweeting about wanting a black sequined miniskirt, got a response from him. OP goes to college in 2011, 3 years after Tim's first message. He starts conversations about religion even. OP gets into campus leadership and helps host an event about female orgasms. Tim wants to talk about that a lot. OP went on a coffee outing with a cool guy 10 years her senior in 2013 and tries to tell herself that Tim might just be seeing her as a promising and interesting person. At some point, OP mentions this to her mom, and OP's mom says that Tim talks to Deanna about it sometimes in hopes that it doesn't come across as ill-intended. OP comes home from college, gets drunk at Dad's bar, and asks sisters close in age if Tim really likes messaging them too. Blank stares. When Tim plays basketball at the hoop with his son Paul in the summers. When OP is home from college, OP catches Tim gazing into the dining room, watching OP's house, right at where OP is seated. This happens once or twice. OP takes an internship in 2014 that makes her travel a lot. Original poster stops replying, and Tim probably freaks out. Tim emails her. Sorry, OP, if my conversations have ever crossed the line. I say, that's okay, Tim, but I don't think we should talk about that. Nude photography is an art form anymore. Tim goes on a very long rave about how much respect he has for me and how his intentions were never harmful. I never accused Tim of having weird intentions. So, I block him on Facebook and he notices right away. He sends another blathering apology and sends another email saying that the last one was an error and that he just can't catch a break. Screw you, Tim. I go abroad for a year and stuff happens that has nothing to do with Tim. In therapy, I'm learning how to forgive. I ended up crossing paths with Tim in the cul-de-sac and I think, hey, he's okay. So, I add him again on Facebook and he thanks her for the ad. The therapy. OP was in, taught her about a lot of triggers. She brings up Tim to her therapist and the therapist is disgusted with him, but compassionate with OP. The therapist says that Tim is obsessed and I'm grossed the heck out at the time and is shaking writing this. At this time, I tell my now fiance about the years of messages and he gets angry. Not at me, but at Tim. I realize that while everyone gaslit me for years, this is not normal. Tim, I've been thinking a lot lately about the conversations you started and tried to start with me when I was in high school and in college. A lot of the time has passed between me being a confused 15-year-old receiving messages from a neighbor who was so very interested in talking to her, who repeatedly came out of the woodwork for 7 years to talk about subjects like puberty, her romantic relationships, nude photography, and even events about sex on our college campus. In that time, I have realized that most people do not do this kind of thing. I was a precocious kid, and I might have seemed like a great person to talk to. I was very young, however, and you were my neighbor. I thought it would be disrespectful to an adult to tell you that I thought that such conversations were inappropriate, and I have wondered all along if you knew that I didn't dare. Now, I'm going to draw a line. You and I will not have conversations more serious than a hello, how are you, and goodbye. don't try to initiate conversations about anything more personal or sensitive than that. If you still have any of my prom photos from 2011, you need to permanently delete them, and you need to talk to a professional about boundaries. I did. Tim replies with a long apology but swears his intentions were innocent and laments about losing the respect of someone he holds in high regard. He also promises to delete all the photos he has of me, prom and neighborhood parties apparently. How long was he photographing me for? And is deleting his Facebook supposedly. So Tim, although I see your house every time I drive away from my parents' home on rare visits, and although you did nothing illegal and can keep pretending that you're a normal old dad and a nice guy, and I will look like the jerk when I exclude you and your family from my wedding, please stay away from me. And parents, please teach your children that they are allowed to dislike and distrust certain grown-ups. Please trust your children's intuition when they come to you with a problem, or they will never trust their own. So I recently wrote about this encounter and it reminded me of the following story. It was so horrible and I must have blocked it out. It happened years ago. Important to the story. I am male and I'm straight. So I'm a young doctor working in a urology clinic. I see this guy in his 50s. There was just something off about him. Something slimy. Anyway, I don't think much of it and do my job. His main complaint was erectile dysfunction. I'm new and inexperienced, so I help him thoroughly. Read maybe a bit too thoroughly. This would include extensive questioning regarding his sex life, physical examination of his external genitalia, additional rectal examination, bloods, the whole 9 yards. Now, I try to make my patients comfortable. It's not easy for an older guy to talk to as a drunk about a stranger, so I make an effort to chat with them. Make a few jokes or make them feel special, you know? Stuff like that. So I do it with this guy also. I prescribe a PDE5I and give him a follow-up date to come and discuss the results of his blood work. Skip to 2 weeks later, I'm in the clinic again and I pull the file of this guy. Let's call him Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith comes into my consultation room and comes to sit next to me. The room is spaced in such a way that I'm behind a table, but his chair is right next to my chair on the same side of the table. I know, right? Public hospitals. He shoves his stool closely next to mine and sits facing me with his legs wide apart. He starts. You know, doctor, I'm so glad you got my file today, because I missed you. How are you, Mr. Smith? He ignores my question. You know, I'm glad it's you because that other doctor working here, I think he's one of those gays, and we don't like those, do we, doctor? He touches my leg. Do we, doctor? I didn't really know what to make of this, but I take his hand off my leg and continue. Mr. Smith, how are those tablets working for you? He laughs. Wouldn't you like to know? You know, I love how personal you get with me. I even got a funny clip on my phone the other day that reminded me of us, and I promised myself I'd show it to you. He takes out his phone and starts scrolling through his clips. Oh, this isn't the one, but it's funny too. He holds the phone eagerly to my face. It's a clip about a guy drawing a palm tree, but then as he keeps drawing it, it turns into a penis, and the coconuts are the testes, and the palm leaves are the pubes. There are a couple of sketches like that. Mr. Smith, please let's get on with it. No, doctor, please, just that one clip. You were so friendly last time. I like you too. He scrolls further, then his little eyes light up. Here it is, doctor. This is the one. Very funny. It reminds me of us. He eagerly folds the phone to my face again. Then the clip starts with a huge white man. He is just standing there naked. I think, okay, this may still be funny, so you hear a door open and in comes another massive man in a doctor's outfit. It's basically a role play. I'm still waiting for the punchline. Something starts feeling horribly wrong to me. I look at Mr. Smith and he is eagerly holding the phone to my face, but he isn't looking at it, just looking at me, almost giddy, smiling from ear to ear, childlike excitement in his eyes. Why did you think I wanted to see this? No, doctor, just keep watching, gets better. The last thing I saw before forcefully removing the phone from his hand and shutting off the clip was the doctor starting to give the patient a handjob. He was showing me gay porn. I rushed through the consultation, dismissed Mr. Smith, and then I got up and walked out of the clinic across to the other side of the hospital. I went and stood on the landing pad of the helicopter and I freaked the heck out. I thought, no, I'm overreacting. I'm just taking it badly because I was molested as a child. It was just a pass he made. Anybody can have a pass at anybody, right? It's normal, right? I'm saying these things to myself as I'm standing there crying like a 6-year-old boy. So, after I pulled myself together, I went to the trauma unit next to the landing pad. The clinic could wait a few minutes and told the story to the doctors on call there as a joke. Like it's just a funny anecdote. But nobody laughs. They look horrified. They keep asking me if I'm okay. If they could maybe make me some coffee or something. That's the only reason I knew what happened to me was unacceptable. How messed up is that? Mr. Smith came a few times again, but I made a point to never taking his file. Screw him. And then apparently I blocked the whole thing out. That's until the other day when I wrote the previous story. Note, I want to clarify that I don't have a problem with homosexuality or even gay porn, but I do feel that it's okay for me to not want to look at it.